My girlfriend cheated with my best friend, and our mutual friends covered it up and mocked me behind my back. So I planned the perfect revenge for justice. Back in college, I was part of a close-knit group of friends from my department. Over the years, we remained in contact. There were 7 of us in total, 4 women and 3 men. One of the guys, whom I'll call Ethan, was my college roommate, and we were practically inseparable. He has been my best friend since our college days. Recently, I attended his wedding, which is where everything fell apart. Within this friend group, I had also been dating one of the women, whom I'll call Nicole, for the past 8 years. For context, Nicole was originally closer to this group, but after we began dating, I became integrated into the circle, and Ethan joined as well. Nicole and I started dating during our second year of college when I was 20 years old. Over the past 8 years, we grew together as a couple. We experienced a few rough patches, but we always managed to work through them. For the past year, I had been discussing marriage with Nicole, but she repeatedly told me she wasn't ready. I found this strange because both of us are well established in our careers and we have been living together for the past 4 years. I couldn't understand why getting married was such a significant issue for her. I value my professional life, but I also want to get married and start a family. Nicole and I had been arguing frequently about this topic in recent months. She believed I was rushing things, which seemed nonsensical to me since we had been together for 8 years. She also insisted that I needed to focus more on my work, which made no sense because I earn more money than anyone I know, having taken over my father's office supplies company for the past 2 years. Many men excel in their careers while being married with children, and I felt ready to do the same. I didn't think Nicole had a valid argument. I was convinced she was refusing to marry me because she didn't want to commit to me, despite our 8 years together. This upset me deeply, and we fought about it often. Nevertheless, despite these problems, we never broke up. Given Nicole's behavior, it never crossed my mind that she might be cheating on me. She acted completely normal otherwise. Either she would apologize to me, or I would apologize to her, and I believed we would always find our way back to each other. But I no longer think that's true. At Ethan's wedding, I realized she had likely been cheating on me for an unknown amount of time. To make matters worse, she was cheating with my best friend, Ethan, the groom himself. I discovered this just a couple of days ago when I caught them making out in the parking lot, in my car of all places. Instead of confronting them immediately, I chose a dramatic approach and decided to humiliate them publicly. To provide some context, Nicole and I had driven to the hotel where Ethan's wedding was taking place the day before the event. That evening, we were supposed to attend the rehearsal dinner, but I was exhausted from the trip, and occasionally suffer from severe migraines, so I decided to skip it. Later that evening, my migraine worsened, and since I had forgotten my medication while packing, I had to go out to buy some. That's how I ended up in the parking lot. I didn't want to walk, so I headed to my car and saw Nicole and Ethan together, passionately engaged. I stood there for about 45 seconds, and as soon as I realized what was happening, I turned around and walked away, unsure of how to process what I had just witnessed. I don't believe they noticed me, as they were too preoccupied with each other. By then, the rehearsal dinner had ended, so I decided to go to one of my friends' hotel rooms to talk about what I had seen, hoping they could offer comfort and help me find the courage to confront Ethan and Nicole when they returned. Instead, when I approached my friend's room, I heard multiple voices inside and realized our entire friend group was there. Coincidentally, they were already discussing Nicole and Ethan. Not only were they talking about them, but they were also laughing behind my back about how oblivious I was. They had known about the affair all along and had been covering for the two of them. My friend Kyle, the only other man in the group, made a joke about how Nicole and Ethan would get caught one day due to all the sneaking around they had been doing. Even during the wedding preparations. Apparently they had even hooked up when I left early from the engagement party. The group found this highly amusing, and I was horrified by how casually they discussed it, as if my feelings were irrelevant. I quietly walked away from the door, and fortunately, they didn't notice me lingering, likely because they had all been drinking heavily. That day was undoubtedly one of the worst in my life. Even so, after returning to my room and crying for about 15 minutes, I resolved not to show my emotions. I had already begun formulating a plan to teach these people a lesson they would never forget. When Nicole finally returned to our room, I acted as though everything was normal, and we went to sleep without any discussion. The next day, the day of the wedding, I greeted everyone as usual, and everything appeared fine until I stood up just before the ceremony was set to begin. In front of all the guests, I announced that I wanted to make a speech in honor of my friend. This was unconventional, so it drew some curious glances, but I suspect Ethan assumed I would deliver a heartfelt speech about our friendship, so he allowed it. Little did Ethan know that his assumption would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Without hesitation, I launched into my meticulously planned revelation, methodically detailing every sordid detail I had witnessed in that parking lot the night before. My voice carried clearly across the stunned silence as I recounted their passionate embrace, their complete disregard for my presence, and their blatant betrayal of trust. But I didn't stop there. I went on to expose the cruel mockery I had accidentally overheard from our so-called friends, describing how they had been gossiping and laughing about the affair, particularly the incidents that had occurred during the engagement party while I was absent, dealing with my debilitating migraines. The assembled wedding guests sat in shocked silence, their faces reflecting a mixture of horror, fascination, and uncomfortable embarrassment. At that precise moment, I noticed that our mutual friends finally displayed some semblance of human decency, their faces flushed with genuine shame as they realized their complicity in this elaborate deception had been thoroughly exposed. However, their belated embarrassment was of little consequence to me now. My attention was laser-focused on observing the reactions of the two primary architects of this betrayal, Nicole and Ethan, as the full weight of their exposed duplicity crashed down upon them. The moment they comprehended the devastating nature of my public revelation, both of them desperately attempted to interrupt and silence me. Nicole, positioned directly beside me in her obvious panic, frantically tugged at my sleeve while pleading with me to sit down and stop talking, as though her feeble attempts at damage control could somehow magically undo the explosive truth I had just unleashed upon the entire wedding party. Meanwhile, Ethan's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely as he flew into an uncontrolled rage, his face contorting with fury as he launched into a series of wild, desperate accusations. He screamed that I was consumed with jealousy over his success, claiming that I was deliberately sabotaging his special day out of pure spite because my own girlfriend had rejected my marriage proposals, and that I was pathetically trying to steal his moment of triumph through vindictive manipulation. However, he overplayed his defense, becoming excessively aggressive, which caused his fiancée to believe my account. She walked off the stage, and when Ethan realized he had been abandoned at the altar, he chased after her. The entire situation descended into chaos, but I couldn't have cared less. I shook Nicole off, made my way to the parking lot where I had already packed my belongings and stashed them before the ceremony, and drove home. 3 days have passed since the incident. For the first 2 days I heard from no one, but yesterday, Nicole contacted me to say that she and Ethan were wrong. But what I had done was outright psychotic. According to her, I didn't merely ruin the wedding, I destroyed Ethan's life. His parents now want nothing to do with him, and his fiancée has ended their engagement. He is broken and homeless because he was relying on this wedding for financial stability. To be more explicit, Ethan is a gold digger, and this wedding was a sham from the beginning. He and his fiancée didn't meet through their parents earlier this year, as they had told everyone, but rather through a dating app. His fiancée, who is 6 years older than him, had received an ultimatum from her parents: either get married and settle down or continue her pattern of casual relationships and risk being disinherited, with everything going to her sister instead. For this reason, she was willing to find a partner, but in reality, she had no genuine interest in marriage. She had been searching for someone who would agree to an open marriage but had been unsuccessful until she met Ethan on the dating app. Ethan wasn't enthusiastic about marriage either, but he had been unemployed for about a year and had tried various jobs, none of which held his interest for more than 2 to 3 months. His goal was to marry someone wealthy and be set for life. Fortunately for him, his fiancée's family was quite affluent. After a few dates, they realized this arrangement would solve both of their problems, and for a time, everything was sorted. But then I made my speech, exposing Ethan at the wedding. Since their parents were unaware of their personal arrangement, his fiancée had to leave, as her parents would never approve of her marrying a man like Ethan. especially after his friend publicly humiliated the entire family in front of so many people. Even though their arrangement had been convenient, it was no longer viable, and they had to call off the wedding. Ethan had been living with his fiancée for the past couple of months and hadn't been doing anything productive. He had even quit his last sales job, and now, after the wedding fiasco, his parents refused to take him back. He has nowhere to go, and finding a job will be challenging since he lacks qualifications. Even if he does find work, it's likely to be low-paying. Nicole believes I should have confronted them privately instead of publicly humiliating them, which has caused significant trouble for Ethan. Even our friends no longer speak to either of them, and Ethan is in serious trouble. For some reason, Nicole expects me to feel remorseful about all this, but I don't, particularly not for Ethan. All he needs to do is find a job, stick with it, and take responsibility for himself instead of depending on others. I don't believe his life has been destroyed. If anything, I've probably done him a favor. However, I do feel somewhat uneasy about publicly humiliating both families. My speech undoubtedly cast both sides in a negative light, and I've met Ethan's parents, who are genuinely kind people. That's the only part of what Nicole said that has stayed with me, and I feel a bit guilty about it. I could have handled this differently by confronting them privately, breaking up with Nicole, and moving on in a healthier way. Instead, I've created all this drama, and it feels strange. So, am I the asshole for publicly humiliating my best friend and his family at his wedding because he and my girlfriend were hooking up? To be completely honest, I'm left in the dark about the actual duration of their secret relationship. The fragments of information I managed to piece together came from that mortifying moment when I stood outside my friend's hotel room, accidentally eavesdropping on their conversation. Most of what they discussed consisted of crude jokes and thoughtless commentary about the entire mess, but one particular detail caught my attention: references to incidents during the engagement party. The irony wasn't lost on me that my chronic migraine condition had inadvertently enabled their betrayal. These debilitating headaches, which strike whenever I'm exposed to loud environments for extended periods, have been a constant battle throughout my adult life. Despite consulting numerous specialists and maintaining a strict medication regimen, I still require substantial rest periods, forcing me to make early exits from social gatherings. Given that our entire friend circle typically attended these events together, I had always considered it selfish and unreasonable to demand that Nicole accompany me home during my episodes. Instead, I encouraged her to stay and enjoy herself, trusting that she would return when she was ready. Looking back with this newfound clarity, I realize how naive I had been. All those late nights when she'd slip back into our apartment, all those times I'd wake up briefly to her quiet footsteps in the hallway. I never questioned her explanations, or felt the slightest hint of suspicion. The pattern now seems glaringly obvious, and I can't help but wonder just how long I was living in blissful ignorance while they carried on behind my back. But frankly, none of that matters anymore. The relationship is finished, and they're welcome to continue their clandestine activities without any interference from me. What strikes me as particularly amusing, though, is how poorly suited they actually are for each other. Nicole lacks the substantial wealth that Ethan clearly seeks in his romantic partners. His gold-digging tendencies have always been barely concealed. More importantly, she's explicitly stated her discomfort with being the primary financial provider in a relationship, describing the pressure as overwhelming. Those were her exact words, not my interpretation. I once admired this quality in her, viewing it as a sign of independence and equality, but I suspect Ethan will find it considerably less charming when reality sets in. Furthermore, I doubt Nicole will have the patience to deal with Ethan's theatrical personality and constant need for attention. He's infinitely more dramatic and high maintenance than I ever was, and she's never shown much tolerance for such behavior. Whatever temporary excitement they've found in their affair will likely evaporate quickly once they're forced to navigate the mundane realities of an actual relationship. At this point, their inevitable dysfunction has become their burden to bear, not mine. It's been 2 days. I haven't responded to Nicole's message about what happened with Ethan. I'm not sorry. I was upset about something, reacted harshly, and that's it. If that reflects poorly on other people, that's hardly my concern. It must have hurt Ethan's parents, but honestly, I can't say I'm too sorry about that. Even though they were good people, Ethan clearly was not, and he completely deserved what I did. I'm not in the mood to apologize to anyone, not even his parents, so I'm staying out of it for now. I did text Nicole back, but only to tell her she needs to come by soon to collect her belongings so she can leave. Now that we're no longer together, I don't want her staying in my house, and I couldn't stand the sight of her things scattered around. I gathered all her items, packed them into boxes, and set them aside so when she comes by she can just grab them and go without wasting any time. She's the only person I haven't blocked yet because I need to know when she's coming. Once that's done, I'll block her as well. I've already blocked the rest of my friends, with Ethan being the first. Now that some time has passed since the incident, all the emotions have started to hit me, and I've been feeling deeply upset about everything. I wasn't betrayed by just one person. I was betrayed by my girlfriend, my best friend, and all these people I considered family because that's how close our group was. Naturally, I've been very emotional about it, but thankfully my biological family has been by my side. They've been incredibly supportive, dropping by over the past couple of days to take care of me and, more importantly, to ensure I'm taking care of myself. I'm truly grateful for them because at least I have some people who are looking out for me. Today, almost 9 days after the incident, Nicole texted me in the morning to say she would come by in the evening to collect her things. I was fine with that. Since she hadn't attempted to contact me in the past 9 days, I assumed she would simply take her belongings and leave. However, when I started handing her the boxes, she said she wanted to look through the house in case I had missed anything. I was skeptical because it meant letting her inside, and it sounded like a tedious process. But I couldn't refuse as I might have overlooked something, and I wanted to complete this task in one go. I allowed her to come in, and she looked around, taking a few additional items I had missed. I thought that would be it, that she would pack those things into the boxes and leave. Instead, she began loitering in the living room, holding those items, and it became increasingly awkward. I had to ask her if she was going to leave. She then told me she really wanted to talk and had hoped that, since some time had passed, I would be more open to addressing the issue. This was infuriating because she spoke as if several years had elapsed since the incident when, in reality, it hadn't even been 2 weeks. I didn't feel I had to address any problems with her. She cheated on me with my best friend, who was about to get married, and that was the issue. They were the problem, not me. I reminded her that I had been very clear in my text. She was only welcome here to collect her things, and now that she had done so, there was no need for her to talk or linger. But she started arguing, claiming that even though she had cheated, I wasn't entirely perfect and needed to stop acting as though this was solely her fault. Until that point, I had been curt but tried to remain calm, even though I was growing more irritated with every passing second. Then, when she implied that I had somehow driven her to cheat, I completely lost my temper and began screaming at her. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to suggest that any of this was my fault. I'm willing to acknowledge that I'm not a perfect person, but the way she framed it made it clear she was implying I had pushed her to cheat. I knew she would bring up our prior disagreements, as I had mentioned in my original post. We had been having issues because I wanted to settle down, get married, and start a family, but she wasn't ready. I had been reflecting on this myself for a couple of days, though from a different perspective where I was the victim. In her view, she was the real victim, claiming she wasn't ready to commit because it was a significant step, and she wanted to live her life a bit before getting married and starting a family for the past 8 years. She had only been with me, and we had always done things with each other in mind. Apparently, she felt she didn't even know who she was, and somehow, this was supposed to be my fault. I couldn't believe she thought these were valid arguments. If she had such a significant issue with committing to me after 8 years together, it was clear we had very different goals in life. The only appropriate ways to handle that would have been to continue discussing it to find common ground or to break up. Instead, she chose to cheat, so she could have the best of both worlds, doing whatever she wanted while keeping me as a fallback option. Somehow, I was the terrible person for not being okay with that. Her playing the victim and pretending we were equally at fault infuriated me so much that I ended up screaming until I was hoarse. Even then, she continued arguing and trying to defend herself, claiming she was under a lot of stress because of me and that Ethan somehow understood her in a way I never did. I repeatedly asked her to leave, but she refused, insisting that I needed to recognize I wasn't perfect and had been just as toxic as she was. I would have called the police, but I was so worked up that it didn't even occur to me. Eventually, I was so exhausted by the conversation that I went to the door, opened it, and stood beside it silently, while she continued trying to justify herself. It took her several minutes to take the hint, and it was incredibly difficult for me to remain silent while she came up with nonsensical arguments to defend her actions. I stayed quiet and stood by the open door, waiting for her to leave. Finally, she did, but even then, she told me I could pretend to be a saint all I wanted, but deep down we both knew it took two people to ruin this relationship. I completely agree, it took her and Ethan. I didn't say that out loud, as it would have sparked another argument, and I didn't have the time or energy for it. She walked out, I shut the door, and I finally began trying to calm down because talking to her had thoroughly riled me up. Even when we were together, she had a hard time admitting when she was wrong, which I used to find somewhat endearing, but today, it was utterly infuriating. I'm incredibly relieved she's gone. I've blocked her now, and I'm going to focus more on myself because I genuinely need it. I've already started going to the gym more frequently, as it helps keep me distracted, and I'm also journaling. It's going to be a slow process before I fully move past everything, because regardless of how it ended, it was still an 8-year relationship, and it's bound to leave a mark whether I like it or not. All I can do is keep trying to ensure that this mark doesn't trouble me too much. On the work front, things are fantastic, even better than before, and I'm very happy. I've also become somewhat of a fitness enthusiast, and it feels great. I haven't had any contact with those people from college for the past 2 years, and I genuinely don't care how any of them are doing. My family has been there for me every step of the way, taking care of me and making sure I'm doing well, and that's all I need. I have very few friends now, just a couple of people from school and some coworkers, but at least they are good people who truly care about me. For the past few weeks, I've also been seeing someone. Dating had been completely off the table for me over the past year or so because I was still dealing with the trauma from my last relationship. However, one of my friends introduced me to her cousin at her birthday party, and she's incredibly sweet and kind. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to her from the moment we met. My friend set us up on a date, and we've been going out for a while now. I told her everything about my previous relationship and how long it lasted, so I want to take things slowly before we get serious, and she completely understands. She respects my opinions and is so kind that she's even told me she's willing to wait because I seem like the perfect guy for her. We're also aligned on our views about marriage and children. She wants those things just as much as I do. I believe I've finally found someone who is right for me. At the very least, I'm much happier than Nicole and Ethan, who got married a couple of months after my last update but couldn't even make their marriage last a year. They ended up getting divorced within a year, and I learned about it from an old college acquaintance who's a bit of a gossip. I can't say I feel bad for them at all, as that would be a complete and blatant lie. But I do hope this serves as a lesson for them, and they don't end up hurting other people in the future as they did to me. Although, given how terrible they are, they might do so anyway. That being said, I feel like I'm truly over what happened, and yes, I'm happy.